Welcome to Cat 125R and the first unit on your rhetorical position. I encourage you to get in touch with me at any time. My name is Elizabeth Losh, and you can reach me via email at lizlosh@ucsd.edu. And I'll also be having office hours on Google Hangouts and also office hours in my office at the UCSD campus. Greetings from Montreal. I'm actually recording this message from a foreign country, and I look forward to hearing about all of the interesting places and experiences that you'll be having this quarter as we move along through the course materials. I know that the first week can be a bit challenging as we work out questions about access to technology. You'll be learning about using Canvas, which is the learning management system that we use for Cat 125R. You'll also be learning about how to use Google Hangouts with your university login. So how to use, say if you're a UCSD student, how do you use your UCSD Active Directory login in order to access the Google suite of tools. You'll also be using Piazza for the forum activities as you post for your first assignment. And you'll also be using Zaption as you respond to the questions about the interactive content on the lectures. Now the good news is that except for Google Hangouts, all of these technologies will be inside of Canvas. So when you use Piazza and you use Zaption, you should experience it relatively seamlessly. And Google Hangouts is pretty simple to use as long as the registrar has you properly set up in the system. We'll also be getting accustomed to some vocabulary in this first module and introducing you to some specialized discourse about discourse. So we'll be talking about specific rhetorical terms in order to help you describe more precisely the kinds of rhetorical activities that you're observing in your own experiences and in your online interactions. So the first important term that we'd like to introduce is the term rhetor. The rhetor is the doer of a rhetorical act. So for example, if the President of the United States gives a policy speech and he's standing at a podium and he's taking part in an oratorical display, that is a rhetorical act in which he is the rhetor. However, there are many situations in which we have doers of rhetorical acts. So you're a rhetor when you write papers for your college classes. You're a rhetor when you present your original research, perhaps in a poster session. You're a rhetor when you create content for online video channels, or when you do other activities that might be designed to build your online audiences. All of those activities are activities in which there's a rhetor who is doing a rhetorical act. It's also important that you know the idea of what a rhetorician is. So the rhetorician is the analyzer or interpreter of a rhetorical act. And often a rhetorician is a teacher or a co-learner of rhetoric. So the first rhetorician that we're meeting in Cat 125R is Professor Jonathan Alexander of UC Irvine, who is the co-author with me of the textbook Understanding Rhetoric, and who's also well known for writing about rhetoric both online and offline in many different situations. So Professor Alexander is going to introduce the concept of rhetorical analysis. First off, he will be talking about sites of rhetorical activity online like Facebook and the way that you establish your identity on Facebook. But he'll also be encouraging you to compare and contrast two websites. So the first website he'll talk about is the website of Erica Hayazaki, and then he'll compare that website to the website of David Lum. So you'll be asked a question about which website you think is more rhetorically effective, given your own interests as an audience member. And that'll be a way for you to get started thinking about rhetorical analysis. So what's interesting about this class is you'll be both a rhetor, someone who will be actively involved in rhetorical expression and performances and someone creating rhetorical artifacts. So you'll be the doer in rhetoric, the rhetor, but you'll also be a rhetorician. You'll be somebody who's providing analysis and interpretation and also facilitating the learning of fellow students in the class. So you're going to be sometimes serving in the position of instructor as you help your fellow students and help yourself think about your rhetorical activities in a more sophisticated way. So in terms of what this means for your rhetorical position, it puts you in an interesting place in which you are both rhetor and rhetorician. And that's true for the very first assignment, the selfie assignment, where we're asking you both to think about your creation of different selfies and how you might stand back from that creative activity and think about the different kinds of identities that you're projecting and critically reflect on them. Now, when we think about selfies, we talk about ways that we might be experimenting with different identities, and it might be helpful before you do the assignment to also watch the interview lecture video with anthropologist Tom Belsdorf. And what Professor Belsdorf says is that all these different kinds of online identities have a certain reality. So even if you're mixing fact and fiction, even if you're mixing online and offline identity, even if it might seem like you have more than one identity online and even competing identities, they all have the status of real identities. They're identities to be taken seriously when it comes to our interpretive and analytical activities. So he's going to encourage you to kind of think about all of these different kinds of identity work that you might be doing and how that identity work might both be an expression of your personal individuality, but also reflect certain kinds of cultural norms. We'll be giving you some tools when it comes to rhetorical theory in order to do more effective rhetorical analysis in your role as rhetorician. That includes rhetorical theory about the means of persuasion. It also includes thinking about audiences and purposes. It includes thinking about the role of technology and how media, mediation, and even remediation, when we move content from one media format to another, all play a role in the ways that we think about our interpretive frameworks. We'll be thinking also about forces and constraints, path dependencies, and codes that might limit particular kinds of expression or performance, and the ways that you might respond to different kinds of pressures in your own rhetorical activities, and how you can kind of step back from those pressures and do some critical analysis that might make you more effective when it comes to rhetorical activity. And given the state of technology and distributed computation, we'll also be thinking about certain kinds of network effects and what happens when people's social relations are very complicated. And you might be tied to a lot of different kinds of individuals, not only through face-to-face contacts, but also through your online relationships. And not all of the connections might be obvious and might involve some critical thinking. So to help with critical thinking, we have a couple of readings also in this first module from the Social Media Reader. It, like all of our other textbooks, is available free online, and I hope you enjoy getting started with the reading, and I look forward to seeing you during my office hours. That's it for this week from Montreal, and I'll see you next week when I will be back in California.